won't be joining us, but why don't we go ahead in the interest of time and get started with this meeting of the Jobs and Business Development Committee of the Los Angeles City Council. We're in the John Ferraro Chamber, room 340 of City Hall, and it is 9:14 right now. We have an agenda with 3 items. If we can first see if there's any general public comment. Okay, we will then close our general public comment and now go to item number 1, please.
Item number 1 is a motion Garcetti, Krikorian, Rosendahl, Englander relative to the technology industry in the city and for the city administrative officer and the chief legislative analyst to report on models for a public-private partnership to bring together the city and its technology community to improve the city's technology sector and create jobs for Angelenos.
Thank you. Now, you might think that our legislative analyst only does work here helping us build jobs, but if you're at the Mexican Independence Day Parade this weekend, you might have seen him in a different light, but we'll leave that for another day. Well done, though, anyway.
Thank you.
We will take, this item is about moving forward in this city. I just want to say a few comments at the outset about this. The motion that requesting our CAO and our CLA to begin looking at models for public-private partnerships in Los Angeles around the area of technology and specifically how we can bring the city and the technology community tighter together. The goals are to really look at how we can use the tech community's expertise to find solutions to city problems, but also then to help this become a place, a fertile ground for tech companies to come to as well. I think for too long we've focused in the city on a lot of the jobs that have passed us by. We haven't been nimble enough in looking at where the jobs are that are going to be created in this country and in this world. We have an unemployment rate, as we know, of about 13%, about 50% higher than the national average. And the time is now for us to start positioning the city for those technology jobs that will be growing somewhere, and hopefully here. So in looking at a strategy that really prepares the city for the 21st century, whether it's looking at technology in the digital information cluster and Silicon Beach as the emerging technology and internet cluster that sprung up on the west side but exists throughout other parts of the city as well now, has been termed. Or looking at some of the other technology sectors. Certainly we've had with clean tech a great movement and initiative there as well in making the city work for that sector. And we have a lot of different tools here. For instance, when we pass legislation, it can change the face of the industries here and provide a fertile ground for them. When we passed our green building ordinance, for instance, that was something that really encouraged new companies to come here and be a part of now what we're probably the #1 city in the country for quote-unquote green jobs. But we want to start in looking at really a strategic public-private partnership with the tech community in the city of LA. The city can use the tech community's expertise to figure out solutions to city problems and to put government in people's hands to touch them. And this partnership would also provide a profile and a platform to attract capital and business in the tech sector to the city as well. And I think we've got great experts in the city. We've got a good human and creative infrastructure, as well as a good business backbone for those ready to help the city that they live in. And we want to be sure to engage them. I've been looking at models around the country and speaking with some of my peers in other cities, as well as with the White House and others. We've seen initiatives from the academic sphere at UCLA, Startup LA, USC as well, and Caltech are looking at how they take ideas from the classroom or the laboratory into the business arena. We also know that the mayor has last year announced the formation of the LA Mayor's Council on Innovation and Industry, and they'll be presenting some of their findings to the mayor, I believe, next month. So I do want to amend this item to ask for reports, amend the item to include updates from the Mayor's Council on Innovation on the work that it has done, and I've been speaking to a number of folks that are there. But I guess in looking at the scoping of this for our legislative analysts and city administrative officer, there's kind of 3 areas I'd like us to focus on. One is kind of more parochial, and it's here, and it's in this building and the rest of the city buildings, looking at the development of the idea of the city government as a platform. In other words, we touch every Angeleno's lives, and for those companies that want access to every Angeleno, that can happen through City Hall, through the services that we provide. We've already seen some notable examples of this. Real-time parking information that we have right now downtown. I can tell you where all the parking spaces are because we developed an app to do so, and we were the first city in the world to do it in Hollywood. It's now expanded, I believe, to 3 and soon 4 neighborhoods called Parker, using the scale of the city and our parking meter contract. We were able to use that data to be able to put sensors on the street next to our our parking meters, and when a car leaves that space, we have real-time information of whether or not those spaces are available. So I'm just talking a little longer to wait for the rendering. So there's 3,091 spaces in downtown Los Angeles right now. And if you want to know where they are, for instance, if somebody there is listening and trying to figure out where they can park near City Hall, it actually says where they are. So here between, on 2nd Street, there's 2 spaces between Spring and Main. Otherwise, you got to go, I think, up to Temple, and there's 2 spaces. There's 1 space left, excuse me, between Los Angeles and Main. So that sort of way of using real-time information to be able to enhance people's lives. And we've got great companies here that are working in that space. ParkMe is one that's based here in the Los Angeles area, and they're looking at algorithms of how people park. And nothing's more important to Angelinos than finding a parking space, but it can help you predict where, at any given time in any neighborhood, you can find a good place to park. But I use that as just one example. I think that first arena is how do we look at the city government as a platform for innovation, and the use of the way we touch people through public safety, through libraries and parks, through our public works. How can we help encourage companies to come here, and if they have an idea or a product they'd like to test, do it with the City of Los Angeles. Secondly, and it's good that we have folks here from our Workforce Investment Board, looking at our workforce skills that are important to the development of a tech sector here in Los Angeles. We do educate some of the most brilliant people in the world in the tech arena. Many times they don't stay here in Los Angeles, and many times they don't come from Los Angeles. And what we can be doing to look at our community colleges, LAUSD, and other partners to begin to help people prepare for a pipeline of jobs in the tech space. This will be a combination of changes to our curriculum. There's exciting things happening in this space too when you think about how many young people already use technology and kind of live it and breathe it. But we have not necessarily done a lot to connect job skills in the tech sector for those individuals. And we should be looking at incubating in our high schools the next Twitter and Facebook, and giving people the skills of how to be an entrepreneur. We're working with one organization in South Los Angeles right now on an initiative called Business in a Box with Operation Hope. You essentially get a box as a high school student that is like junior achievement on steroids. You don't just learn about business, you incorporate a business by the time you graduate. It gives you all the papers you need, all the lessons you need, and you can actually graduate from high school with your first business in hand. That's the sort of entrepreneurialism I think that we're going to have to embed in. And then for our workers who are out of school or older, what can we do to help really give those skills to folks in the tech arena as well. And then third, and perhaps the most important, is what do we do to help bring ideas to market and to create the conditions for business to want to locate here. And obviously businesses locate here for a series of complex reasons. Most often it's the quality of life, and we're not going out of this committee necessarily have a huge report on how we create the neighborhoods that tech entrepreneurs will want to come to. That said, our tax rates, and we've done some work to create a lower tax rate for internet companies and green tech companies as well, with our city's gross receipts tax, looking at how we can help our universities channel those ideas and those patents that come out of our universities to companies based here, and the overall kind of, I guess, climate for companies, what ideas and what strategies the city can undertake to provide everything from financial assistance to technical assistance to help those businesses start up. So those would be the three areas, kind of city government as a platform, the workforce training, and what we can do to make this a tech business friendly place, bringing ideas to the market, if you will, and to help grow those here. So with that, I know we've got some folks here from the tech sector. Did anybody fill out any public speaker cards? Do we have any on number one? Do you want to come forward and just, we usually get folks to fill out a card, so if you don't mind doing it afterwards, but come on forward and give me your comments. We'll do it after. Just identify yourself for the record. I know who you are, but since there's literally tens of thousands of people listening on telephone right now to this proceedings, or maybe not, but there might be one or two. Why don't you please state your name for the record and share with us some thoughts that you have.
Good morning. My name is Fred Wolty. I'm the Executive Director of the Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator, which is the business equivalent of a baseball farm system for clean technology here in Los Angeles. Our goal is to go find young technologies and management teams and get them to market. We've been around for about a year, and I just wanted to reinforce the importance of this initiative. We see every day how competitive it is to find companies, talent, and funding for our initiatives here in Los Angeles. And there are a lot of, as you've indicated, there are a lot of regions that have much larger, more developed ecosystems that we are competing with every day. And so I'm really thrilled that you're doing this committee. We'd love to contribute in any way possible. We're clearly on the third part of your idea, how to bring ideas into the marketplace. We're all about commercialization of technology ideas. But if you're an entrepreneur, the one thing you really want access to, beyond money, of course, is access to a customer base. And the city of Los Angeles really represents a customer base for many of our clean tech startups. It's a really incredibly important purchasing power, and it can be a reference customer for these young companies who have new technologies that need a chance to commercialize them, to demonstrate them, and to demonstrate them with an organization that has credibility. And so I really think that this is a terrific program. We'd like to participate in any way possible. And we've done a lot of studies of other ecosystems in regions that we'd be delighted to share with you on our results.
Well, while you're here, Fred, and thank you for your extraordinary work. I've had the pleasure of visiting a number of times, and I'm extremely impressed with the initiative and your leadership and the micro ecosystem that you've already created. And if you're kind of giving us a few directions to explore for our chief legislative analysts and our city administrative officers, we look at this. Where in particular should they be looking? And I wanted to make sure that we heard from you as well, because sometimes people think of technology as just one bit of technology. We've got a very broad technology infrastructure here.
The first one is kind of surprising. It was surprising for me, and it's in Toronto, and it's an ecosystem called Mars, and that has nothing to do with the planet. It's medical and related sciences ecosystem, and they have developed probably the most refined ecosystem. Started out with medical sciences and it has evolved to clean technology. And in this ecosystem, they have funding, they have an incubator, they have all of the strategic partners in terms of businesses located in the same area. They have a conference center, and they've found a way to combine public and private funding to make this happen. And it's huge, and it's very impressive. And so the whole integration of a venture fund into the incubator and into this ecosystem is pretty unusual, and it's really working pretty well for them. The second one I would encourage looking at, which is not surprising, is probably the leader, is the Massachusetts corridor, MIT corridor. They have significant statewide funding from a trust that delivers about $23 to $24 million a year in operating funds. And by the way, the Mars program is somewhere between $6 and $9 million a year in operating funds. To give you perspective, we operate at $600,000 a year.
So you're good bang for the buck, right?
We try to be. The Massachusetts program is once again much wider and much broader than just an ecosystem. I mean, just an incubator. They've really put it totally together, and because of that, they are making pretty significant progress, both in terms of jobs and in gaining increasing share, but also in getting the awareness out. Part of this whole game is getting your fair share of the awareness. Because we have a lot of things going for us, but yet when I go to D.C., not many people realize it. It's like if it's not east of the Mississippi, it's not really high profile. And we don't do a good enough job in talking about how strong we are for a clean technology and innovation center. We have the region's best research universities. We have more clean tech startups than anywhere else in the country. So we have a lot of really good things that make us special. We just have to take advantage of it, and we have to, quite frankly, work together, because one of the things that we don't do that particularly well is play well together, because we're spread out, you know, and we're all doing our own thing, and that allows a region called Titusville, Florida. Not exactly a big city, but they beat us out for a federal funding opportunity because they were able to put together their resources in a more effective manner and play as one.
Interesting. Thank you. Well, thank you, Fred. I appreciate that testimony. It's very helpful, and we will look at those models as well.
Great.
Moving forward. Are there any other folks who would like to make any comments for public comment? Okay, if not, I'd like to actually hold this here in committee, amend it to include the updates from the Mayor's Council on Innovation on the work is done, so that we get the initial report here. I don't think it needs to go forward to council. And if we can see if we can get something initial completed in 30 days, I think the timing would be good after we have the Mayor's Council on Innovation and Industry reporting to the mayor on October 9th. That'll give us a chance to incorporate them in as well and to hear from them. So with that, we are just a committee of one, so there is no objection, and we'll move that forward. Thank you all very much for those of you who are here for that item. If we can look at item number 2.
Item number 2 is a Community Development Department and Workforce Investment Board joint report relative to the acceptance of an additional $231,305 in California Multi-Sector Workforce Partnership, Workforce Investment Act National Emergency Grant Funds from the South Bay Workforce Investment Board, and to amend the existing agreements with 5 city workforce centers to provide reemployment services to dislocated workers.
Right. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. By the way, I could have used that application this weekend when I was shopping downtown.
Telling you. Download it. It's called Parker, and it's free. Or no, 99 cents, sorry.
Fantastic. I'm Greg Irish, the Director of the Workforce Investment Board. I'm joined by Greg Burks, who is representing the Community Development Department and is actually the manager of the South Los Angeles region for CDD. Good morning. A year ago, we came before this committee and before the City Council to accept $3.4 million of Workforce Investment Act National Emergency Grant Funds. We had joined with a number of jurisdictions, 21 WIBs throughout the state, in applying for these funds from the federal government. We submitted a joint application, and we were actually funded to deal with those who are unemployed, basically folks who have been displaced as a result of the recession. And this sort of consortium of 21 workforce investment boards received $45 million from the federal government. Our share of that was supposed to be $3.4 million. You authorized us, the council and the mayor, to accept up to $3.4 million. We're before you today because we have an opportunity to accept an additional amount of money. It's not a large amount, but it's $231,305 to add to our total $3.4 million, which will then bring us to $3.678 million to actually deal with our issues of unemployment here in the city. We're going to use that money to serve, again, with the new money that we received and the former amount, 575 dislocated workers. And 50% of all of that money will be used to actually pay for training. Then a portion of it, 33.5%, will be used for supportive services, purchase of books, registration fees, et cetera. And 37.5% of that money will be used to cover staff-related services. We've distributed the bulk of that.
Walk through those percentages again? I think that added up to more
Yeah,
than
it's
100%.
on the page 5.
Page
50% of all the money we're receiving out of the total, which will be $3.678 million, will go to direct training expenditures. 33.5% will go for supportive services, so that's actually a participant-related cost. And 37.5% is for staffing within the workforce centers, and a small piece of city-related cost.
Is there some overlap there? Because that adds up to more than 100%.
Yeah, I guess the 33.5%.
That adds up to
37, yeah.
11%.
Yeah, the 37.5%. I'm sorry, we should have been more cognizant of that.
So is it maybe 26.5?
Yeah, it's probably the admin portion. I would assume the admin portion for the core and intensive would be
Okay.
the one that we would adjust. Thank you.
We should
Chairman, we
amend
should-
that. Why don't we find that before the end of the meeting? We'll make that change.
And that's why we're here. We've got more oversight. We need you for that.
I don't provide you policy oversight today, just math oversight. So.
So what we're going to do is distribute most of the money to WorkSource centers. We've got 5 centers that are going to deliver the direct services. We're before you today because there is a mechanism that doesn't really require, when we have this amount of money, when we're talking about $231,000, it usually doesn't require council approval. We notify you, but you've given us the authority to accept that amount of money. But we're actually increasing one provider's contract above $250,000. So the 5 providers are the Canoga Park WorkSource Center, that's going from $248,000 to $408,000. The Hollywood WorkSource Center is going from $248,000 to $408,000 in terms of their contract. The Metro WorkSource Center, the same thing, to $408,000. The Southeast Los Angeles Crenshaw WorkSource Center at $408,000. The Marina WorkSource Center, which is also the coordinating entity for this in terms of service deliveries, going from $248,000 to $610,000. And that's why we're before you today, because that exceeds $250,000.
Okay.
Again, we'll go from 375 people being served, which was the original projection. Now that we have the full amount of money, the aggregate, we're going to serve 575 dislocated workers. We'll report to you, as we always do at the end of the year, as to the success of the program. We've been doing pretty well, and the reason why we're getting this overage is because we're expending and meeting our service goals as part of this consortium, and this was leftover money from some of the other partners.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay, well, let's figure out what those percentages are. We'll move that forward.
We can do that before we leave.
Okay, that'd be great. And without objection, I mean, obviously by myself, I'll move that forward. And a side note, I think we're waiting on the Business Source Center transmittal for the Hollywood Business Source Center. So if we can
Right.
get that moving too, we want to.
We'll get on it.
jobs out there. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
All right,
Chair.
thank you. And all right, we got number 3. This is the last piece.
Item number 3 is a communication from the mayor and CAO relative to the reallocation of funds for fiscal year 2012-2013 for the 2009 American Recovery and Reinvestment Act Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant Program.
All right. Good morning.
Morning. Maria Ramos with Office of the CAO. The Mayor's Office of Homeland Security and Public Safety is requesting to reprogram interest earned from the fiscal year 09 American Recovery and Reinvestment Act Justice Assistance Grant to supplement the salaries of 3 of the 9 city attorneys that are assigned to the Community Law Enforcement and Recovery Program. The interest on this is approximately $210,000, which would revise the total grant award to $31.1 million. Additional funding for the personnel assigned to the CLEAR program will come from other grants, excuse me. In addition to the reprogram of the interest earned on the grant, the Mayor's Office is also asking to modify the Tower Improvement Project budget at the Baldwin Hills site to allow for the continuation of services during the relocation and construction of new shelter facilities. There was $300,000 in contractual services for the Tower Improvement Project under the grant budget. The Baldwin Hills site will be demolished in order to make space for the new building, but before demolition can occur, existing equipment must be relocated to avoid interruptions to services. In the year-end FSR, $70,000 of that $300,000 in contractual services was transferred to ITA's salaries account, but because of the timing of the release of the year-end FSR, the funds were not expended in fiscal year 11-12, as work could not be completed before the end of the year. So therefore, the Mayor's Office is requesting to transfer that $70,000 into current year accounts and then reallocate it to ITA's accounts to reimburse for grant activities.
All right. Anything either of you would like to add? No? Just here for questions. Well, the CLEAR program is one of our most successful and great programs. I've known it for a long, long time. So just the tower improvement piece, that's separate from the CLEAR stuff? That's just for the interoperability? Is that correct? Okay. All right. Well, make life easy and give you some extra time back today. We'll go ahead and move the communication from the mayor and the CAO report. I'll adopt the CAO recommendations, and we'll move it forward to council. Great. Thank you. Thanks for your patience. Thanks for showing up. And with that, if we have no public comment cards on this as well, this meeting is adjourned.